Child Services had an open case on 22-month-old Michael Harris. You see, the presenting issue at the time was that his mother, Roseanne Key, consumed many narcotics. Michael and his siblings lived with Rosanna and her grandparents, who also used methamphetamines and drank alcohol. They also cared for Roseanne's children. The children lived in a dirty home with domestic violence and were often neglected. Roseanne admitted that she smoked marijuana and that her parents used methamphetamine, drank alcohol, as well as her roommate, who also smoked marijuana, and that all these people cared for the children. A judge's hold was granted, and Michael, as well as his older brother, were removed from Rosanna's custody. They were placed in foster care. The eldest child was placed with his father. During the 6 months that followed the removal of Rosanna's children, she was engaged in therapy, parenting classes, psychosexual education groups, substance abuse treatment, and she gained independent housing and employment. She attended supervised visits with her children and maintained contact with her assigned case worker. The 2 younger children were returned to Rosanna's care on the 10th of December 2010. Now on February the 1st, 2011, Brighton police received a call from a Donald Scarlett. He was the boyfriend of Rosanna, and he said that Michael was not breathing. Rosanna was at work, and her boyfriend, Donald, was caring for Michael and his older brother. Medics responded to the home, and they found that Michael was blue and not breathing. Michael was taken to the Valley Medical Center and then transferred to the Children's Hospital around 3 p.m. The doctor from the Valley Hospital called to inform that Michael had a skull fracture. He had bruising in his left ear and behind his ear. He had bruising on his forehead, a large knot on his forehead, bruising or scrapes around the neck, and bruising on his chest and hand. Donald reported he was in the shower with Michael's older brother washing his hair, and then he heard Michael started to scream. Donald reported that he came out and Michael was wedged between 2 pieces of furniture. Donald said that he gave Michael watered down orange juice and laid Michael on the couch, but then Michael threw up 3 times. Donald reported he heard Michael gasping for air and went to check on him, and Michael was blue. He then called Rosanna, and she told Donald to call 911. This incident happened at Donald's house. Rosanna and her children at the time did not live at Donald's house, but they did spend the night there. Now, while Michael was being treated at the Children's Hospital, he was reported to have numerous serious injuries, including a kidney injured, a lacerated spleen. He also suffered a lacerated pancreas, occipital skull fracture, a shot bowel, and swelling on the skull. No, this did not happen because of furniture or orange juice. Michael also had extensive bruising to the head area. You see, Michael's injuries were significant enough that the medical staff did not expect him to survive the injuries. And on February the 1st, 2011, a crisis team responded to the Children's Hospital. The Adams County case worker interviewed the 3-year-old sibling while at the hospital. He himself was observed to have a small bruise on his left cheek that was purple in color and circular in shape. The bruise appeared to be about ½ inch in diameter. His speech was very limited, and therefore the case worker was unable to conduct an interview with him. He had a very low attention span. The doctor stated his medical exam looked fine and that he was a very active child, and the doctor did not deem it necessary for any further testing on him. He was taken into Child Services custody. Then the Adams County case worker conducted an interview with Rosanna at the hospital. Now, Rosanna reported that that night they stayed at Donald's house. However, her and Donald first met at her workplace. She stated she and Donald had been together since October the 31st. She advised she had a current open case with Adams County, and on the previous Friday, she met with her case worker and provided Donald's information for a background check. Rosanna also stated she just got her children back from foster care. She said she and Donald had been fighting recently because of Rosanna's children. The 3-year-old urinates on things as he's being potty trained, and Michael is always crying. Rosanna reported she left for work around 7 in the morning and Donald was supposed to watch the children. Rosanna stated she had a missed call from Donald at 9:26 a.m. but she called him back at 10:04. When Donald told her he took a shower with the 3-year-old and he heard Michael crying, Rosanna stated she did not know why Donald took a shower with her son as he's never done that before. Rosanna stated normal discipline for her children is some form of time out. Rosanna said in order to calm her 3-year-old down, she will use downward dog or exercise before putting him in time out. She learned this technique in her parenting class. Rosanna tried to use the exercises as discipline. Rosanna then claimed Donald has never put his hands on her children. She then said the day before, Donald was making Michael do the downward dog and then picked him up by his waist, causing him to cry. Rosanna also reported she and Donald had a fight last week because Michael was crying, and Donald thought that Rosanna was babying him. Donald then grabbed Michael's arm in a rough manner. She stated that the previous night Michael went to bed at 9:30, and that's the last time she saw him. On the morning of February the 2nd, hospital staff reported Michael did make it through the night. However, the neurosurgeon stated he would likely not make it through the day. Rosanna was notified of this and given the option to take him off life support. On the afternoon of February the 2nd, a forensic interview was attempted on the 3-year-old with law enforcement present. He was not able to provide any information or insight to the incident that occurred. Eventually, Michael Harris died as a result of the injuries on February the 2nd, 2011 at around 6:50 p.m. By the way, if you can, please follow me on Instagram. My previous Instagram was removed, so this is my new one. Link is in the description. On February the 9th, 2011, a staffing was held at the Children's Hospital. Staff from the hospital, the coroner office, the district attorney's office, law enforcement, and child services were present. At that time, hospital staff reported Michael had traumatic abdominal injuries, including a transaction of the pancreas and duodenum and a liver laceration. These injuries would have carried the child to have immediate symptoms of severe pain. During the staffing, law enforcement provided details as to how the incident occurred from their interview with Rosanna. Law enforcement reported Rosanna described that the night before Michael was presented to the hospital, her boyfriend, Donald, disciplined Michael for not eating by forcing him into a downward dog position. He then abused Michael's head on the floor and making him cry. Donald then took Michael into another room with the door closed. Rosanna reported she had heard Donald the child. She heard the breath go out of Michael and then quiet. Wow. Law enforcement reported that the neighbors heard screaming from 10:30 to 1 p.m. Rosanna admitted to not checking on Michael after this incident, including before leaving home for work the next morning. Rosanna denied Donald had been physically abusive in the past. Rosanna also admitted staying overnight at Donald's apartment with her children frequently. Now, the coroner's office decided that their assessment was founded for physical abuse, with the severity level of fatal on Mr. Donald Scarlett towards Michael Harris. They also found neglect, failure to protect, with the severity level of fatal, and this was made towards Rosanna. There was also a finding of inconclusive for emotional abuse towards the 3-year-old, both by Donald and Rosanna, and a finding of inconclusive for neglect, environment injurious towards the 3-year-old by both Rosanna and Donald. Eventually, on February the 9th, they were arrested. Donald was charged with first-degree murder. Rosanna was charged with child abuse, criminal negligence causing death. But there's also more history of abuse in the family. In fact, the family had 4 prior referrals to the child services beginning in 2007. All 4 of these were referred to the Adams County Human Services Department. The first referral was assigned for an assessment and closed as inconclusive for environment injurious. You see, on the 27th of November 2007, a call was made to the Human Services Department. There were concerns for the 2-year-old who lived with his mother, Rosanna. It was reported that Rosanna was staying in a home with approximately 8 other people who also lived in the home. It was reported Rosanna smoked marijuana, and the grandparents also took methamphetamine and smoked marijuana. The Adams County caseworkers responded on the 29th of November and interviewed everyone in the home, and they observed all the children. The home was cluttered and dirty, but everyone denied any drug use. Rosanna was cooperative and explained the child's father drinks alcohol and has threatened her, and she has a restraining order against him. The caseworker attempted to follow up with the reporting party, but unable to make contact. Rosanna had obtained a restraining order and was protective of her children. This case was closed. Nothing was done. Then on the 20th of December 2007, another call was made to the Human Services Department. There was a report that a 2-year-old had a large bruise upon returning from a visit with his father. The clinic where the reporting party took the 2-year-old to observe the bruise also made a report to the Human Services. Again, nothing was done. The caseworker with the open assessment did not follow up. On April the 15th, 2009, a report was made to Child Services from a hospital social worker. Roseanne had given birth to Michael the previous day, but on that day, Rosanna tested positive for marijuana, and Michael's meconium was positive for THC. However, there were no complications at the time of birth. The doctors reported that the grandparents were at the hospital and they both smelled of alcohol. Rosanna reported that her mother helps her care for the children and that she's been stressed and she's used marijuana at a friend's house. But she did acknowledge that this was a dumb thing and she should never have done it whilst pregnant. Rosanna presented herself as very nice and cooperative. On the 27th of May 2010, the Human Services Department again received a call. The reporting party stated that the grandparents again were using meth, marijuana, and abusing alcohol. The reporting party stated the home is filthy and Rosanna will leave the children in the care of all these people while they are high on drugs. Again, the caseworker went to the house, found it to be dirty and cluttered, but nothing was done. There was drug paraphernalia within reach of the children, but again, nothing was done. When people were interviewed at that time in the home, they all did not admit to any drug use. And this is when a judge's hold was granted and the children were removed from Rosanna's care. On the 20th of December 2007, the same services department received a complaint about a bruise on a child, and this referral did meet criteria for a further assignment, but was screened out with instructions for the intake caseworker that had an open assessment on a previous referral to the same address. There was, however, no documentation where the caseworker addressed the bruise in the open assessment. Furthermore, the open assessment was on her mother, Roseanne. In other words, there were so many open files, they just could not be bothered to deal with it. So, with all of this, Donald Scarlett was sentenced in the Adams County District Court for the brutal death of his girlfriend's son, Michael Harris. Scarlett was convicted of criminally negligent child abuse resulting in death and reckless manslaughter. He had been charged with first-degree murder of a child by a person in a position of trust. He was sentenced to 40 years in prison. Rosanna, she was also arrested and sentenced to 16 years. However, she's not being displayed on the Denver Department of Corrections website, so maybe she's been released. The Colorado judge slammed social workers for the death of the toddler. He said the boy had been failed by authorities. The judge noted that Michael died after abuse so severe it severed the boy's pancreas. He had ruptured nerve endings in his spine and caused his heart and lungs to stop functioning, with his lip quivering at times. The judge angrily decried the conduct of the social services in the case, calling them ridiculous. He accused the Human Services of hiding behind privacy laws in hopes that the case will be forgotten by the judicial system. During the trial, Scarlett's lawyer, Harvey Steinberg, also blamed social workers for Michael's death. "What, you muppet," and pointed out that Scarlett had a stable work history and no prior criminal record. The Human Services Department did say that they were deeply saddened by Michael's death and that professionals outside the department also were involved in placing children. Assistant District Attorney Jess Redmond said Michael's injuries were among the most violent and severe he had ever seen. He said, "Unfortunately, our system was unable to protect the child before his death, but we are gratified that the jury who heard the evidence delivered justice to him in this case." And as I'm reading this story, it reminds me of another story which I want to tell you now. It reminds me of a story from Las Vegas of a mom's boyfriend hating the kids. You see, Brandon Tosland is currently right now being charged with the killing of Mason Dominguez. Dominguez's body was discovered inside Tosland's Northeast Valley garage, concealed in a trash bag in a freezer. This bastard put a child in a freezer. You moron. A grand jury indicted Brandon on 10 charges, including murder, child abuse, kidnapping, and domestic violence. Mason's 28-year-old mother, Dacia Maldonado, said she and her 2 children moved in with Brandon in March 2021. As the criminal case moved forward, Mason's mother filed a civil lawsuit to freeze Brandon's assets. She claims she is the victim of domestic violence. Mason's mother told the police she had not seen Mason since December the 11th and feared he might be dead. In grand jury transcripts, the boy's mother said Brandon would not let her leave the home that they shared alone after he told her Mason was deceased. When police arrested Brandon after a traffic stop, officers noticed a set of handcuffs where Mason's mother was sitting in the passenger seat. Brandon was also in possession of her phone. Detectives also located a large hole in the backyard, which they described as a potential grave. Brandon alleged the couple had handcuffs they sometimes used while engaging in sexual activities. Dirty bastard. Brandon said the family was living a normal life until Mason's death in December. Brandon's 2 children from a previous relationship also lived in the home, but were not there all the time due to their mother having shared custody. According to Dacia, Brandon told her that Mason was dead on December the 17th. Brandon told Dacia he had woken up in the middle of the night and Mason was not breathing. Prosecutors said the boy's body showed signs of repeated abuse. An autopsy showed injuries to his small intestine, a cut to his left eye, bruises to his face, and abrasions on his arms, stomach, and head. Brandon himself alleged that Dacia knew of her son's death as early as December 10. Dacia told police and the grand jury that she was frequently handcuffed or locked in a room after learning her son was gone. Brandon never revealed to Dacia that the boy's body was in a freezer in the garage. Dacia concurred and colluded in the couple's joint decision to place her then deceased son Mason in the freezer in the garage in the home. Brandon also claimed that Dacia told another family member about Mason's death in an effort to lie to the other children about her son's whereabouts. Grand jury transcripts revealed that Dacia's mother removed her son from his pre-kindergarten program in September 2021. Police were alerted to the home after being contacted by Clark County School District Police when Mason's 7-year-old sister brought a note to her teacher that her mother was being held against her will and did not know what happened to her younger child. On February the 20th, Brandon allowed the mother and daughter to sleep together. The mother then told her daughter that she was going to give her important notes to give to her teacher. The mother hid the notes in her daughter's sock, prompting the teacher to call the police. This case is still ongoing and the trial commences in May 2024. And the reason why I said these cases are kind of linked is because you have mothers whose children have died due to their boyfriends. Women, choose wisely please. Although in the case of Dacia, there's nothing she could have done. In the case of Roseanne, she could have done everything. Anyway, comment, tell me what you think.